Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, we are all searching for ways to better evaluate players in order to give meaningful feedback. Over 15 years ago, I put together a test called the JAMODI Skill Rating. The JSR takes players through a series of tests involving basketball skill or athleticism, giving them one rating at the end. Their JSR rating will give you clarity on what needs to be discussed with players and parents on areas they need to focus on improving. I test our players at least 4 times each year. They're able to compete against each other, past players' scores, and most importantly, their past performances. If you'd like to start testing your athletes, email me at jamodipodcast@gmail.com for more information.
Yeah, keep it simple. And I love that list right there. I think a couple things that you said is I don't see anything wrong with prioritizing fun in our practices because fun, enthusiasm, spirit, it all elevates performance. It takes them to another level, to me, in my opinion, farther than fear or do this or else. Think if but I'm the same way. I don't get jazzed up to go into a staff meeting. I'm sorry. I just don't. That's, but if they're telling me, hey, we're going to do something fun in it. All right. I might check it out. So I think prioritizing fun is really good. And I asked this question in the speed round that if this was your last year of coaching, what would you do more of? And majority of guys spend more time in relationships and have more fun. These are coaches talking. And so I think I need to hear that where there's times where I wonder, are we having too much fun? Is this not serious enough? And then, man, I see the joy on their face. I'm like, no, right where we need to be. But also listening to other coaches that have done it way longer and been way more successful, they would prioritize that more. So that's one thing that I really love about what you said. My second is a question. You were at China Springs and with that other style, winning in the 40s, the moment that you increase possessions and your speed, well, it's the other team is going to start scoring more. And so you're not going to have that same defensive feel or look or, keeping teams under a certain thing. Have you been okay with that, with giving up control of that as like you have the offensive side?
Yeah, that's been a big challenge because, at China Spring, we had teams that I thought took a lot of pride in some really sound defensive fundamentals. We jumped to the ball. We took a lot of charges. We boxed out. We were strong. And we would push it some. I had one year, we led the state in threes in China Spring one year. And so we did shoot it some. But we also had some years that it was hunker down and build the wall, and you get the bound, get slash curl lift going. And then
there it is again. There it is.
So I think the thing that we try to talk about is, you mentioned this, we try to use the similar, I bet there's a lot of the same words. We talk about gold shots, everything we want to talk about is not so much total points. We really try to emphasize on some limiting gold shots, being the second to jump at the rim, no offensive rebounds, and then dominating the turnover margin. It's really our pillars of play, but we talk about we're going to play faster. We're going to shoot it better and more. We're going to play with pressure. We're going to dominate turnovers, and we're going to dominate details. And that's kind of what we try to say, how we're going to play, not necessarily how we're going to interact and react, but how we're going to play. And so, I've kind of gotten away from maybe a total points or total turnovers. If we have 14 turnovers but force 24, we're dominating the turnover margin.
Yeah.
If they get 7 offensive rebounds but we get 16, we're dominating that possession gap. And so, if we score 75 and they score 60, that's still a pretty big margin. So it's really been about, are we dominating our pillars of play? And it hasn't been easy. Trust me. There's been times, we don't rotate quite as hunkered down as I'd like, or we switch an off-ball action that I was like, how do we not just jump, shoot the gap, meet the pass? It's fundamental. Let's, and you should be arrive with a high hand. And sometimes they just switch it. I'm like, all right, well.
Transitions is messy. Transition is
Yeah.
messy and it's fast, and play the same stuff that we love on the offensive side, what we can do to defenses, it's hard to see it on the defensive side happen when we know, like, oh, we love when teams do that. Oh crap, we're doing that right now. And yeah, obviously moments, and we want to create better and better habits, but I've just seen the more that speed increases, but you mentioned it, like we should be better at it every night that we play, because nobody does it in theory, right? No, that's what we tell our teams. Nobody does it every day like we do. So all of these transition games, all of these small advantage, big advantage games, or disadvantage games, we're living in that uncertainty and just continuing to have to see a need, fill a need, see a need, fill a need. And we'll be better at that than the people we're playing. But perfection in it will never happen because of how difficult it is. Sometimes those angles, sometimes that offense can surprise you, and, oh, I thought it was this and it's not. And now we're having to scramble. And sometimes blind squirrels find a nut, even if you're trying to do the right thing. So I don't know. I just rambled there, but
No, I think one thing that's been underrated that I've found is since we've gone to more conceptual, I feel like my guys, since they read the game better, sometimes it translates to the other side where they see things and reads. We've had a few fall games where they'll kind of see the back of the ball handler kind of go into a zoom, and they'll leave and go double right off that handoff, and we create a live ball and those
yeah,
types of things where, I didn't say to go, we're not running a run and jump right now. Why are you trapping? But at the same time, obviously that's a great time to go. They're in the middle of a side dribble handoff, you leaving, we can rotate and play 2-on-3 week and go get the double and let's go. So giving up control, but as long as, like you said, I think if we're playing with those instincts and we're playing with our 5 pillars, where I feel like we're in a great position to go and then create. Because I do think this, we talk about transition. Live ball turnovers have been proven analytically will lead to the highest percentage shots. It's just, and so, when we talk about turnovers, if we have some because we're trying to throw it and it, hits our mom in the stands or hits the chair, we can get to 5-on-5,
for a hat, let's go. Yeah, yeah.
But when you can create live ball, you're going to create shots in the 65, 70, 75 percentile range, which is just, honestly, I've had too many games where we've had way too many live ball turnovers, and it's such a hard one to come back from.
Yeah. You mentioned fall league a couple times, and I wanted to come back to that because this was 2019, 2020, the year before COVID. We were doing, this is up in Dallas Fort Worth, we were doing all the fall leagues, spring leagues, summer leagues, and team camp and all this stuff. And I started to have more and more guys that were really big into select ball and realized, man, I feel like I'm really withdrawing a ton from them. Yeah, I'm encouraging them to play select ball and do those things. But then, but by the way, we got to drive to Denton on Monday and play in this spring league game. And I asked a couple of my players, like, listen, you guys are pretty busy with what you're doing with practice and games. Do we do spring league? Do we do this stuff, or do we take a break from that and you guys just focus? And then when it gets back to the fall, we'll start training and we'll get ready for the school season. Because for those guys, a lot of those select ball guys, they have 2 seasons now. They have school ball and select ball. And we get mad when select ball tramples on us, but we don't think about it at all when we trample on them. And so I took a break from all that. And, it was super freeing for me because I've tried to think about what are all the things that I still do because either my coach did it or everybody else does it. And maybe it's still good to do, but I want to make sure. And so I went away from that. Well, coming down here, there's a lot of these leagues around, and like they played in a summer league. It was my first time to watch a summer league game in 6 years. And I remembered why I don't really enjoy it watching, because I'm not coaching them. But even more, like they don't even know me then. This was a whole other animal, but we're trying to talk the next day at open gym about how about this spacing? And it's just, but what are your thoughts on fall league and things like that? Why is it good to do? And maybe even in Central Texas, what advantages does it bring?
Well, I think you mentioned, the big thing I found this when I was at China Spring was Waco's kind of in the middle. And so we had some kids that played quite a bit of select when I was at China. And then we had some kids that they only played during the season. They multi-sport kids, or Waco was kind of in the middle where getting to Austin or getting to Dallas you're not gonna be able to go to Dallas, Mansfield twice a week for practice and then a Saturday, Sunday and stay in a hotel. And we had some, and there's some organizations in Waco that do a great job, but there's just not enough to play against. Even if you practice there, you got to go up and play on the weekends. And so that kind of built, my background a little bit with that. And then coming here to Belton, we're kind of in between, we're a little closer to Austin, but we still, and we have more guys just being bigger and things like that do play quite a bit of select and go down. But I still find it value in terms of, gathering information. All we want to do is gather information about our teams this time of year. In the summer and in the fall, the old baseball coach at China Spring, he's a multi-time state champion, Coach Beckham. He told me that because you're always just gathering information. So when it comes time, you can fall back on that whole encyclopedia you've gathered over the last 7 months. And that gives you the confidence to make the correct decision in the biggest moments. And, you don't write everything down we do at Hot Hoops, or this kid didn't make right decisions, but you're just internalizing. So I think it helps build that bank. But I think it's also a good understanding of when are live periods, when are recruitable periods, when are big tournaments. So the way we've kind of done it is June is kind of our month. July is your month. And the gym's open and we'll do some ball handling. We'll do some shooting, but I'm going to go to the beach in July. I hope you go on vacation and do something fun.
Yeah.
And then the same thing in the spring. We haven't played in a spring league, so to speak, because there is a lot of time. That's a huge time for select basketball. And so we finish up hopefully as close to March as we can get. And then kind of April and May, or really April for sure, we try to focus on, fundamentals, shooting, weight room, and building our bodies and building relationships and building our skill level. But you need to go play. And then in the same thing in May, we kind of do a little bit. We need to have something if we're going to play in June and play at TABC and those types of things. So I think it's also letting them know what they need. This is yours. I'm not going to infringe upon that time. These are ours. And yeah, it's a little bit more than it used to be. I think one thing that's helped is fall. There's not a ton of select fall. There's some, but it's not, near of what the spring or what July is. So
especially not for high school kids, it should really fall off.
And so fall, it's just another way we can add to that encyclopedia as a coach So I've always enjoyed it. I think there's a line, and like you mentioned, some team camps, and you probably remember those SQTs.
They're still going up in Dallas. I used to get those emails all the time about those. Yeah.
And there's a line of all that. And so I just try to, when I talk to our parents, I map out the year and I try to say, kind of our time, your time, our time, your time. And I think that helps them understand kind of where and when. And that way they do have 3-4 months to go and play. And I want you to play.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. I mean, I was kind of looking at all the kids at Midway. There's only a couple that play select ball. And so with that idea, where at Faith, it was probably 3/4 of them did, and if they didn't, it was that, that kind of had said something more about them as a player than just not a desire to. And so
for sure,
my thought was maybe like down here, how do I make our team feel more of like, this is where not only are we going to develop you every day with skill work, but even year round, you're going to play more together. But there's a part of me that like, I don't know if I want that. I like the idea of Midway basketball season ends in March and it doesn't start again until November or October. In between that time, we're going to do weights and skill work and shooting, no doubt, but go play with people, learn another style. We love to run and gun, but there is other ways that you could play and hear another voice. But if they're not doing that, then I felt like almost, do I need to do it? And so that's where I love your idea of gathering information. And I wrote down too, it's another opportunity to celebrate, another opportunity to celebrate kids trying things when that they maybe thought we didn't see them do the year before, but they've been working on their own in that area. And I always love those moments. But then there's the deal too of expectations. How do you manage the expectations of why are these guys on this team? Why am I on this team and that? Because you kind of almost put kids almost in a box, or you're letting them know ahead of time what you see in them or where they might be 6 months from now. Well, how does that come up?
So that was I'll speak to when I was at China Spring, we had 11 hot hoops teams or summer league teams. Cause there's a junior high, we'd have 2 7ths, 2 8ths, 2 9ths. And those Junes were wild. That got to be kind of crazy, but it was always, I think that's the importance of when you end the season, you got to have an end of the season evaluation with every kid, and where you say, okay, in March, I think you're going to be on this team. These are the things I need to see you do. And then in May, you can say, you've gotten better, but you still aren't doing these things better. You need to play with this team. And I've been blessed that I've only had a few that have been really on the edge. And, I've done things where sometimes they play 2 with this group and 2 with this. And, it's summer. If somebody's gone, maybe they play up or down. But I've always told them the number one thing you do in the summer is play. And we're never going to put you in a situation where I don't feel confident you're going to get minutes in the summer. But Coach McDade had a great quote when we talked a lot about this. He brought up, he goes, the problem is when they pay for something, they think they bought something. So you gotta, and that's such a hard thing because I get it. If I go to Walmart and I pay something, they go, oh, not today. I'm going to be pretty upset. I said, well, hold on, I paid for this. And so that's such a, I think that's where just being clear, what we can guarantee. And I'm not going to say it's been perfect in 11 years of doing this. I've had a few times, but I think it's helped for the majority of saying in March, this is what we think, this is where we see you. In May, and then in November, or October, kind of talking in those 3 time frames of where, and I think that's helped.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.